Perhaps you knew this already, but in case you haven't heard, a famous singer in the state of Minnesota died about 9 days ago. His name is Prince. And of course, he's been on the front page of the newspapers. And the first story that seems to be on the news. He's garnered a lot of attention these days because, of course, he was incredibly popular, very well known, not only in our humble state of Minnesota, but as you know, throughout the country and throughout the world. And as tragic and as sad as his death is at such a young age, perhaps what is even more tragic is the focus on his life these days. Because it seems that what the media is concerned about and what so many people have become concerned about is, well, it's that he didn't have a will. And so that seems to be the focus, the attention. And of course, once that news broke, why, now we hear all kinds of stories, don't we, about people that are quickly getting in line, saying that there was some kind of an agreement made between them and Prince. Inheritance is dangerous because we all know what money does to us and what money does to people in general. It has a tendency to divide. Human beings choose to break relationships because of inheritance, because of wills that are considered to be unfair or not equal. And so unfortunately, I've had the experience of hearing the stories so many times of seeing families that are broken apart, where relationships have been quite literally destroyed, where siblings no longer talk to one another because, of course, because of the inheritance. Inheritance is dangerous because we know that money divides. The good news for you and I on this 6th Sunday of Easter is that the theme of my homily is not about money, and it's not about inheritance in the human understanding of it. The good news on this 6th Sunday of Easter is this: even though Prince didn't have a will, Jesus Christ did. He had it all figured out. And he made his last will and testament known to the disciples and to you and I. He didn't even have to write it down, but he made it quite clear that he would leave something to the disciples and he would leave something to you and I that would not divide like money does. No, Jesus' last will and testament is quite clear. It doesn't even need an attorney to write it up. It's right there before our very eyes this week. Jesus' bequest, his last will and testament, is quite simply one thing and one thing only: peace. Peace I give you, Jesus says. My peace I leave with you. Not as the world knows it do I give you peace, but that is Jesus' last will and testament before he goes off to be rejected, before he is crucified, before he dies. Why, he's in this room with his disciples and he's sharing with them his last will and testament, and he gives to them peace. I think you would agree with me. Peace does the opposite of money, money that so oftentimes divides. Why, peace, what does peace do? it brings us together. Jesus was no fool. He knew what he was doing. He knew why he was sent. He knew the words that he was speaking, what he taught, how he lived, why everything had its purpose. And it all revolved around this one gift that he wanted to leave his disciples and you and I, and he bequeaths it to us. Which means what? It means we have to be willing to take this inheritance, which is ours, freely given, equally distributed, no questions asked. And it's given to you and I so that we might use it. It's what the gift of an inheritance is all about. Several months ago, I was at the funeral home, and there, as we were celebrating the life of a member of our parishes, why I went up to one of the sisters of the deceased, and she was looking through the photo album, and as she was looking through the photo album that was there, she said to me, "I'm so glad we took this trip. I'm so glad we took this trip." And she's pointing to the pictures of her and her sister as they went on this trip together. And I said, "Well, what is it about the trip that makes it so meaningful?" She said, "Well, because we took this trip to the West Coast to see our other sibling, to see our brother, whom neither of us have had talked to for over 16 years. I said, "Really? What kept you and your brother from having those visits, those encounters, those conversations?" And she, of course, went on to say, "Well, after Mom and Dad died, there was a dispute. A dispute, of course, that had arisen because of the inheritance." And she said because there was misunderstandings and there were words spoken that shouldn't have been spoken, nonetheless, there was this division that had happened in our family. And finally, she said, finally we decided that after having gone through all of those things that our mother and dad had left us, all of those trinkets and all of those things that we deemed so important, and after they had been around for so long, she said, finally my sister and I realized that there was something more important than all of that stuff. We began to realize that the relationship that we needed to have with our brother was more important. So she said we went, not knowing what kind of a greeting we'd even receive, but she said, nonetheless, we went with the same hope, with the same faith, with the same desire to be able to mend this relationship. And she said, and it happened. We went to his door, and he was home. And he opened the door, and we were invited in. And she said then it was only after we were able to sit down at a table together over a cup of coffee and to be able to literally cry together and to embrace one another as though we hadn't seen each other and we hadn't had a conversation for over 16 years. Why? She said it was something absolutely incredible. She said, I'm so glad we made that trip. And her brother was standing next to her in the same funeral home with tears running down his eyes, nodding his head in agreement. My friends in Christ, peace unites. Peace brings us together. Peace is not just something that we earn or that we strive for, but peace is a gift. And peace that Jesus speaks of in today's gospel is his Spirit. It's the Spirit of God that is given to us that desires for you and I to come together, to be united, to work together, to pray together. Why? to do all things together rather than being people who strive to continue to be people who are okay with division and leaving people on the outside and others on the inside. No, Jesus gave us his last will and testament. He gave you and I a gift. And the gift is simple. The gift unites. The gift brings us together. The gift is Christ. The gift, our inheritance, is peace.